the worst game of tag ever. The first time I met King Midas, he was desperately trying to convince his servants to play a game of tag with him. Now, you'd think a king could make that happen. Wave a hand, issue a command, tag, you're it. Simple. Nope. These servants, not interested. No matter how he begged, cajoled, threatened, or even tried to bribe them, they ran. And they ran fast. Can you blame them? Behind King Midas stood his beloved hunting dog, Muffler, frozen mid-wag, now reduced to a literal golden retriever. Solid gold. The king had simply bent out just a quick, affectionate pat. And that was it. Game over. Midas stared at his hand, then at the dog, then back at his hand. You ever realize instantly you've made a catastrophic mistake? Yeah, that moment. But that was the good news, because the same thing had happened to his daughter. One moment, she was alive, warm, laughing. The next, perfect gold, silent, still, untouchable. Yeah, that will ruin your day. And suddenly, nobody wants to play tag anymore. King Midas was having a very bad day. I mean, I'm sure it's happened to you. You wake up, grab a snack, accidentally turn your loved ones into decorative objects. Standard stuff, but I'm getting ahead of myself. You're probably wondering, who is this guy? And why does everything he touches turn to gold? Is that supposed to be awesome? That's the problem with wishes. They always sound better before they come true. These were supposed to be the king's golden years after all. Yeah, no. Let me rephrase that. All right, Mythmaniacs. You know the drill. Grab a cup of ambrosia, slip into a comfortable chair, and let's go spin a 24-karat myth.
Now, the identity of Midas's parents? That was a mess. A full-blown, never-ending debate, usually taking place late at night down at the gods' favorite hangout, Thanasis Olympus Greek restaurant. Yeah, even immortals owed a good euro and a place to argue. The popular theory was that his mother was the great Rhea, also known as Cybele, mother of the gods herself, which would make Midas half-brother to Zeus. Yeah, no, I don't buy it, because if that were true, my godfather Zeus would have mentioned it at some point. Hey, Mythman, by the way, you've got a mortal half-brother turning things into gold. Feels like that should have come up, so no, not Rhea, not buying it. All right, fine. So what about his father? Surely that's settled, right? Wrong. A lot of people pointed to Gordius. Yes, that Gordius. The one tied up with that whole Gordian knot situation. We'll get to that story later, trust me. It's a good one. But I happen to know Gordius wasn't his real father. Stepfather? Sure. Actual father? No. I can still hear it late nights at the Nasties, way past closing time. Homer and Hesiod go on at it like always. Homer, his dad was Gordius. Hesiod, not. Homer was so. Hesiod was not. Homer, afraid so. Hesiod, afraid not. Boys will be boys. Those two couldn't agree on anything, but man, they were sharp. But here's the thing. People knew immediately that Midas wasn't normal. The signs were there from the very beginning. As an infant, lying quietly in his cradle, servants watched in stunned silence as a line of ants marched in formation, carrying grains of wheat up the side of the cradle and gently placing them between his lips. No cry, no fuss, just acceptance, like he knew. So naturally, they asked the oracles, and the oracles said, this child would grow into a man of immense power and unimaginable wealth. One oracle disagreed. He claimed the whole thing meant Midas has ants in his pants and he needs to dance. Now, in his defense, he was completely blasted on Tepal fumes at the time, so we're just going to go ahead and ignore that one. Sure enough, Midas grew up to become king, a pleasure-loving ruler living the good life. He ruled over the Brigians, also known as the Moskians, and while his reign wasn't exactly busy, it wasn't nothing. He donated a magnificent throne to the oracle at Delphi, a gift worthy of Apollo himself. He discovered white and black lead, which convinced people he was brilliant. They were mistaken. Well, get to that. But what really defined King Midas? Flowers. Roses especially. His gardens were legendary. The first great rose gardens ever planted. He spent hours there every single day, surrounded by beauty. And when he wasn't doing that, he was listening to music, drinking vintage wine, and absolutely not working. Let's just say the word work was not in King Midas's vocabulary. The man had everything: wealth, comfort, beauty, pleasure, no struggles, no worries, no limits. So naturally, he wanted more. Now, it just so happened that my cousin Dionysus, or as I like to call him, Cousin Danny, was on one of his little tours, conquering Asia, heading into India, spreading culture, and by culture I mean wine, lots of wine. He was followed faithfully by an army like no other, a swarm of wild, chaotic satyrs, and an even more unpredictable force, a bunch of wild party girls known as the Maenads. Let's just say these were not your typical followers. No discipline, no structure, no off switch, just music, wine, dancing, and absolute unstoppable energy. And me? I went along for the ride. Official chronicler, professional observer, totally objective. I'm pleased to report I've almost recovered. Give it a few more years and I might even remember what happened. Imagine an army recruitment line that stretches from Greece to India and back again. Now imagine the pitch. Fall in, soldier. Here's your weapon. A giant flask of wine. Unlimited ammunition. Your fellow warriors? A pack of dancing lunatics with fire in their eyes. Now go forth and fight for your right to party. Yeah, sign me up. And the music? Oh, the music. The satyrs would kick things off.
We love drinking Danny's wine. We are drinking Danny's wine. Cause it makes us feel so fine. Cause it makes us feel so fine.
And then the Maynards would answer.
Danny's army doesn't lose. Danny's army doesn't lose. You've got swords, but we've got booze. You've got swords, but we've got booze.
Honestly, Hard to argue with that strategy. Now, Cousin Danny, you've got to love the guy. Charismatic, unstoppable, and at some point, he decides to rebrand himself as Bacchus. Slides over to Italy. New name, new scene, same chaos. Witness protection program? Maybe. Midlife crisis? Definitely. But somewhere along this wild wine-soaked journey, this unstoppable force of chaos was about to collide with a man who already had everything. King Midas. And when those two worlds meet, luxury meets madness, wealth meets excess, and trust me, that's where things get interesting. So you can imagine what happened every time the army of Dionysus rolled into a new city. Within hours, the entire place would convert. Oh, not by force, oh no, by party. And then came the celebration, a full-blown bacchanal, the kind that would make even Dionysus pause and say, "Oh, all right, that's impressive." Now, during one of these legendary celebrations, there was a certain member of the entourage who got just a little too into the festivities. His name, Silenus. Picture this, an old man, round as a wine barrel, permanently confused and deeply spiritually committed to drinking. Now, to be fair, Silenus wasn't just another party animal. This man had history. He was the one who raised young Dionysus, hid him, protected him, taught him, back when Hera was trying to make the boy's life difficult. So yeah, Danny loved him, respected him, honored him. But let's not sugarcoat it. The man was a drunk. So naturally, in the middle of one of these celebrations, Silenus wandered off. No plan, no direction, no awareness, just him, his equally confused donkey, and a whole lot of wine. They drifted left, right, nowhere, everywhere. The donkey brayed for guidance. Silenus didn't even notice he was lost. Meanwhile, Cousin Danny, he was far too busy celebrating with his newest recruits to notice that his mentor was gone. And then, as fate would have it, Silenus stumbled his way straight into the palace grounds of King Midas, right into the royal rose garden, and there, among the thorns, he collapsed hard. The next morning, the royal gardeners found him, snoring, bleeding, covered in roses, looking like something between a wild boar and a very unfortunate human being.
Yo, Dimitri, what is that thing? I don't know, but it's naked, and I'm concerned.
They poke him, prodded him, nothing. So eventually they did the only reasonable thing. They covered him in flowers, garlands, reeds, roses everywhere. Oh, I'm sure you've woken up like that once in a while. Eventually, this floral masterpiece was brought before King Midas, and to his credit, the king almost kept a straight face. Almost. But Silenus, he knew exactly what he was doing. Drunk, yes. Fool, not even close.
I have very important friends, Your Majesty. High friends in low places. I was a mentor before I went mental.
Yeah, that tracks. And then he started telling stories. And he didn't stop. For 10 days and 10 nights. Tales of distant lands, strange people, wild journeys across Asia and India, and all the while, slowly but surely, emptying the royal wine cellar. Ah, the stories Silenus spun. They entertained the king, they delighted the court, and most importantly, they earned Silenus something very valuable, Midas's favor, and that was about to change everything. And then, one night, between generous gulps of the very fine wine, Silenus leaned in, lowered his voice, and began telling a story that would stay with King Midas forever. He spoke of a vast and mysterious land far beyond the great Oceanus, a continent unlike anything known to man, a place of shining cities, towering beauty, and people who live long, joyful, and extraordinary lives. These people, the Atlanteans, were not like us. They did not wage war. They had no hunger for conquest. They chose love, understanding, balance. They believed that before anything could exist in the physical world, it must first be born within the soul. They dreamed their world into existence. Every night, they imagined, created, shaped reality itself. They lived in harmony with nature, not above it, not apart from it, but as one with it. Animals, the earth, the sky, family. And they lived by a single truth. To harm another was to harm yourself. To kill was to be killed. Thou shalt not kill, even in the pursuit of your ideals, was their philosophy. But Atlantis was not the first. Silenus spoke of civilizations even older, long forgotten, worlds that had risen and fallen, destroyed by their own hands or swallowed by Gaia herself when the earth shifted and reclaimed what was hers. At their height, the Atlanteans sent out vast fleets, millions, Silenus claimed, traveling across the world to share their knowledge, to teach, to elevate, to awaken. But when they arrived, they saw us, our wars, our greed, our ignorance, and they turned back, disappointed, knowing we weren't ready. Before they left behind signs, clues, markers for the future. The great Sphinx of Giza, the pyramids, and more, far more, hidden behind sand, ice, and ocean, waiting. And the strangest part, they knew the end was coming, and they were not afraid. They welcomed it, because to them it wasn't destruction. It was transformation, the next step. And there sat King Midas, listening, absorbing, a man surrounded by wealth, hearing a story about people who needed none. A king who had everything, listening to a tale about those who wanted nothing. And somewhere, deep in his mind, something began to stir. Not wisdom, not enlightenment, desire. Now, Silenus wasn't done. Oh no. Between gulps of wine, he told Midas about a place that no traveler ever forgot, a terrible whirlpool with two streams flowing nearby, each lined with beautiful fruit trees, each offering a very different experience. Eat from the first, and despair takes hold. You fall into sorrow, grief, until eventually you simply fade away. Eat from the second, haha, that one's special, You grow young again, then younger still until you become a child, an infant, and then nothing. Gone. Yeah, hard pass on both. Now, I know what you're thinking. That's insane, and you'd be right. But I'll let you in on a little secret. I've been there, courtesy of my dear aunt, Hera. Let's just say she didn't appreciate one of my poems. I ended up in that second stream, starting aging backwards fast, life flashing before my eyes in reverse. I was this close to becoming a very confused fetus when, whoosh, in comes my guy, Hermes, snatches me right out of the stream and drops me safely back on land. Absolute legend, saved my life, more than once actually. Now, Aunt Hera, she wasn't thrilled, but she needed Hermes too much to do anything about it. Smart move. Look, Auntie, if you're watching, I'm sorry, really. To err is human, to move is bovine. We're good? No, I didn't think so. Anyway, back to Midas. For 10 days and 10 nights, Silenus filled the king's head with wonders, mysteries, and impossible worlds. Eventually, the wine ran out. Tragic, I know. And Midas did the honorable thing. He sent Silenus back, escorted safely to Dionysus. When Dionysus, he was thrilled, relieved, grateful. Probably threw a party about it. Actually, he definitely threw a party about it. And as thanks, he sent me to give word to King Midas. Name your reward. Anything, whatever he wanted, no limits. You should have seen his face. Pure joy, pure possibility, his mind racing. Wealth, power, more. Now, I already knew how this would end. My good friend Apollo had filled me in, but this was Midas's moment, his choice. And so, without hesitation, King Midas said, I wish that everything I touch turns to gold. I asked him, just to be sure, are you certain? Midas replied, that's my final answer. Yeah, that's what I was afraid of. And just like that, the wish was granted. Midas stepped into his garden, picked up a simple stone and, flash, gold. He laughed. He celebrated. He touched everything he could find, stone, branches, flowers, gold, gold, gold. He thought he'd won. At first, it was glorious. Everything he touched transformed. Roses, gold, trees, gold, grass beneath his feet, solid gold. Even the bench he sat on, shining, perfect, precious gold. Midas scooped up sand and watched it become golden dust. Slipping through his fingers like sunlight, he laughed, delirious. I have everything, he thought. I'm rich beyond reason. He always said, I'm a god. But then he noticed me watching and thought better of it. Smart. For hours he played, like a child with a new toy. A butterfly, gold. An apple, gold. A nightingale landing on his finger, gold. Beautiful. Silent. Dead. Eventually the king grew hungry and thirsty, so he returned to the palace and ordered a feast, a grand one, fit for a man who now believed he owned the world. His mind raced. Today Greece. Tomorrow Mount Olympus. Everything gold. Everything his. Yeah, this was going well. I took my seat as far away from him as possible. Front row view of the disaster. Because as my old friend Cato the Elder once told me, between the morsel and the mouth, many things may happen. And then, right on cue, came Muffler, the king's loyal dog, running towards him, tail wagging, expecting a treat. Midas reached down, just a simple gesture, a familiar touch. Flash. Cold. The dog froze, mid-motion, forever. He looked at the dog, then at his hands, then back again, and for the first time he understood. Panicking, he grabbed his wine. Flash. The goblet turned to gold. He tried to drink, and the wine became molten metal in his throat. She dropped it, gasping, terrified. He reached for fruit. Flashed. Gold. Bread. Gold. Everything gold, beautiful, perfect, and utterly useless. What's happening? How do I stop this? How do I turn it off? And that was the moment King Midas realized he hadn't been given a gift. He had been given a curse.